Hello and welcome back to Interpreting India. 2021 has been defined by a deadly second wave of COVID-19, precarious geopolitical relations, and a rapidly evolving technological landscape. This season, we at Carnegie India are examining many of these challenges and opportunities that India will confront in the coming decade. I'm your host Anirudh Burman, and this week we are diving deep into Delhi's new draft Master Plan 2041. Most cities undertake plan development and make periodic plans to direct the way the city should develop. Proper planning and implementation allow stakeholders to understand the requirements of the city and to weigh in on issues like housing, commercial, environmental, and infrastructure requirements. At the same time, improper planning often exacerbates housing shortages, increases commuting distances, and leads to environmental degradation. City plans in India have been criticized for improper projections and assessments, lack of adequate consultations, top down decision making, and faulty implementation. It is against this context that we discuss the new draft Master Plan 2041 for Delhi, published by the Delhi Development Authority. Delhi is one of the fastest growing cities in the world and among the most economically dynamic in Asia. It is a historic city that is also one of Asia's greenest. It serves as India's capital and also as North India's key commercial center. In the past, master plans for Delhi have sought to address the challenges that come with these advantages: high population growth and inward migration, environmental damage, and housing unaffordability, among others. In July, the DDA released the draft Master Plan 2041. It follows the city's Master Plan 2021 that was in operation until last year. The 2021 plan aimed to make Delhi a global metropolis and a world-class city, but was criticized for its reduced responsiveness to the needs of low-income communities and its inability to meet targets on time. The 2041 draft plan also comes after the devastating second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. In this episode of Interpreting India, we aim to understand and analyze the fourth Delhi Master Plan. How has this plan for 2041 improved upon the shortcomings of the preceding master plans? Does it address the new urban requirements stemming from the coronavirus pandemic? And finally, how does it compare with the planning process across other cities in India? Joining us today to discuss the Delhi Master Plan 2041 is Rumi Aijaz. Rumi is a senior fellow at ORF, where he is responsible for the Urban Policy Research Initiative. His research focuses on building a better understanding of urban issues to produce new and correct knowledge for managing urban growth in India. Rumi has previously held positions at the non-government organization Sanket and the National Institute of Urban Affairs. He is the author of the book India's Urbanization Experience, which was published in 2015. Dr. Aijaz, welcome to Interpreting India. Delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So let's start with a bit of an introduction to the planning process. Why are master plans created? What do they try to do in the context of urban centers like Delhi? And how well has this process worked for Delhi in the past?
Master plan is basically a document that prepared by an agency which functions in this city for guiding the development of that city. If you look at any global city, before we come down to India or Delhi, and that too from say the Europe or the United States or some of the other developed countries in the world, a stark contrast exists between the developments that we see there and the developments that we see here in our country. In those countries, in developed countries, the development looks very orderly, and this is basically due to a plan which was prepared and it was followed with respect to implementation, because of which things look more orderly there than in our country. So, to respond to your question, I would say that That is the main aim of the master plan is to guide the development process in the city.
And when you talk about other global cities, do master plans in those cities also resemble the kinds of proposals that are contained in our master plans, especially some of the details with regard to the design of housing, the kind of land use planning? Do those also go into those kinds of details, or is it much more high level explanation of the overall philosophy of planning?
The master plans, which are followed or prepared in some of the most developed countries in the world, I would say that these are uh, quite different from what is being prepared for Indian cities. The reason is that those cities are much ahead in development, in innovations, in technology, and they have come up to a level where a different kind of approach is being followed there, unlike what we see here for Indian cities. So, if you travel in a global city like a city from China or a city from even UAE or in UK or in the US, the the kind of land use or the utilization of land for different activities is a lot different from what has happened here because as I said, those nations are at a different level. They have taken care of several social and economic issues. Unfortunately, India is still struggling to address those issues, and hence I would say that the plans or the plan documents prepared for those cities which are in the developed countries and those that are prepared in India are could be said to be significantly different. If I were to give an example, I would make a reference to the characteristics that exists in a city, and by characteristics I mean the resources like water bodies, the green areas, the connectivity. So there, they give a lot of attention to those aspects. The kind of heritage that we see there is all maintained at a different level. Here in India, not enough attention has been paid insofar as a holistic approach is concerned. Here we are handling things in part by part, but not holistically. So that's the reason we see more of balanced development and equity there, and here we see more of imbalances and inequalities that we would come to in the later part of the discussion.
Right. And what you're basically saying is that proper planning can actually address socioeconomic inequalities that arise in the process of urbanization. Uh, could you explain that a little bit more? What are the planning tools or processes that actually help address some of these issues while a city is trying to undergo urbanization?
Yes, I would, in this regard, I would say that, when I will go back to the example of a developed country where when you travel from one part of the other to the other, you do not see so much of deprivation and inequalities and the harm which is being caused to the environment, uh, uh, which which we see here in Indian cities in a significant manner. Uh, like if you come down to the case of Indian city and that to Delhi, if you look at the developments that have occurred in Delhi, most of those are due to the planning efforts that have been made from time to time since pre-independence times, I would say, when Sir Edwin Lutyens and Herbert Baker had prepared master plan for the New Delhi area. Uh, since there was a plan at that time, several of the developments that took place happened in a planned manner. But subsequently, there was a period when no plan was available for the city of Delhi.
In India, what happened was, or if you look at the case particularly of Delhi, there was a period when there was no plan for the city. And this happened before India attained independence. The Lutyens plan, Edward Lutyens plan, period was over after 1931. And thereafter, until 1961, there was no master plan for the city of Delhi. And while a plan was needed, as people continued to pour into Delhi, they were coming into Delhi from various parts of the country and even from the neighboring countries. They required many things, and they provided for themselves, because the agencies that existed did not know about their requirements, and therefore what happened as a result of all these developments is that the inequalities began to emerge. They began to happen in different parts of the city. There were migrants who were coming. Many people who were coming, who come to Delhi, still now they come for occupation, for finding some livelihood, and not only work or employment activities were required. They since they were migrating, housing, infrastructure, services like water, sanitation, roads, were all required. And since there was no plan and all of these things were required, some private builders began to operate in a manner in which they felt like. And there were no strict guidelines or rules and regulations to be followed by them, and therefore haphazard development began to occur. So here you can see the significance of a plan, of a master plan. If there is a plan, and if it is prepared on the basis of people's requirements and the long-term requirements of a city, the agencies are in a good position to guide future developments that occur. But if there is no plan, or if the planning agencies do not prepare a plan which efficiently meets the requirements of the people, then inequalities occur. And this is what is observed in the case of Delhi. Unlike some of the global cities in developed countries, where I would say two things distinguish those cities from our cities. One is that they have brought a large sections of the society up to a certain level, which I'm trying to say that there has been an upliftment of the society there. People have been brought above the poverty lines and they lead a better life. In Singapore, cities like Singapore, persons who are employed in various informal sector activities live in better off areas because they are able to afford it, unlike here. And they live in planned areas. So those city governments, they have uplifted the populations they have brought them above poverty line, and then they have prepared plans to which that population is responding very well. Because when you prepare a plan, you would want the society to respond in a certain manner. If you have a plan for waste management or any other activity, you would want the society. It is not a one-sided effort. It is an effort from on the sides of both the parties, the planning agencies, the development agencies on one side, and the citizens on the other side. So if you are wishing to get a response from the society on a certain thing, you have to have the society of that type. You have to uplift the society. If you don't do it, even a good plan will not be able to give a proper shape or development to a city.
Thank you for that. And while we are on that topic, I just wanted to ask you, planning in Delhi has often been criticized for not being consultative enough. So first of all, do you agree with that proposition that we have not been consultative enough in preparing master plans in the past? And the second part of that question is, has something changed in the way consultations have taken place in the preparation of this 2041 master plan?
Like I said previously, the city's character is defined by those who are on the one hand, the government, and on the other hand, the civil society or the citizens. So from that point of view, collecting inputs or feedback or opinions from citizens is the basis, or it's the fundamental thing. The legal document or the Delhi Development Authority Act has this provision as a mandatory requirement that a survey of citizens is to be conducted to know their requirements, opinions, before a master plan is finalized. So since the DDA Act was prepared first, and all the subsequent or the master plans, the first one, the second master plan, the third master plan, and now the fourth master plan, all of these master plans have to follow the guidelines or the provisions provided in the DDA Act. Therefore, in every master plan, this process of obtaining inputs from the citizens has been followed. Now, if one is interested in knowing about the quality or the manner in which this exercise of inputs collection or responses collection has been conducted, I would say it has improved over time. Previously, the Indian cities, and if you talk about Delhi, there is a lot of diversity. There are people from different social and economic classes. So previously, not enough importance was given to capture the diversity in the plan preparation process. But now when you look at the fourth master plan, from the information that is available and from what we learn through discussions and publications in the media or elsewhere, this diversity, and I would say that an attempt has been made to capture this diversity. And by this, I mean to say that there are people who are living in the slums in Delhi. There are people who are living in unauthorized colonies, in resettlement colonies, in urban villages like Munirka. In villages, about 2% of Delhi's area is still rural, and there is that rural population that lives in those villages. Then there are census towns and peri-urban areas, so, and then there are planned areas. So by diversity, this is what I mean, that Indian cities offer a wide diversity of social and economic characteristics. And if the surveys are conducted, they have to ensure that this diverse views are captured, because I'm sure you would agree that your requirement, the requirement of slum dwellers, the requirement of those who live in unauthorized colonies, those who live in planned colonies, those who live in villages in rural parts of Delhi, those who live in census towns, which are not statutory towns. They are still governed by rural governments, and also those who live in peri-urban areas like Bijwasan or Najaf. Their requirements are totally different. So I would say, and then there are other activities that exist in this. The plan is for the whole population of Delhi. There are people who are traders and who are part of resident welfare associations. There are group housing societies. There are plotted colonies. So I would say in this plan, the fourth plan, from what we are hearing or learning, at least an effort has been made to identify this diversity and to conduct consultations with this. Now, if you probe this angle or aspect further, one would be interested in knowing or seeing transparent information in this regard. While they have identified and highlighted that there is a diversity that exists, but to what extent this has been captured, if they have been to all of these diverse areas that exist in the city, how much proportion of that population has been consulted, is a question mark, and it's not so transparent. So to respond to your question, yes, improvement has been made in this respect insofar as collecting diverse opinions is concerned, but there is less transparency in how much of that diversity within a certain cluster has been captured.
That's good to know, and it would be great if we could actually get access to some of that information. Next, I'd like to ask you if you could walk us through some of the main suggestions of this new draft master plan for 2041. What are some of the proposals that are eye-catching, that are welcome and new? And what are the main differences from previous master plans for Delhi?
Yes, this is a question that is of concern and interest to almost everyone who's living in the city of Delhi. So I would say that this is a very good question. My response in this respect would be that, as you know now, and as all planners, urban planners, and the planning community knows, that there is a purpose for preparing a master plan. Previously, the purpose was, as previously, by previously I mean in the past, when Delhi was still evolving or developing, there was more emphasis on land use planning. Vacant areas were available a lot in the past, as unlike today, and therefore there was a lot of land use planning related work in the past. But now, at this stage in which we are, I would say that the focus has shifted to sectoral planning. Land use planning is happening in bits and parts because there is much lesser land that is available in current times as against what was available in the past. But now, since most of the development has already occurred, many construction has happened, there is less vacant spaces available. Therefore, the focus is more on sectoral planning. And by sectoral planning, we understand that it is to do with mobility, to do with housing, to do with infrastructure and services, is to do with environment, economy. And hence, when we look at the scope or the outline of the fourth master plan, you would find chapters on environment, on economy, on heritage, on culture, on public spaces, on shelter, on mobility. And all of these have found a place within the document because there is a requirement for these things. When the plan was being prepared, they did a comprehensive, or the DDA did a comprehensive baseline study of the sectoral position, the condition of each of these sectors, what is required, and how that can be done. And hence, there are these chapters within the fourth master plan of Delhi, draft plan, where you could find information on all of these sectoral aspects. So to respond to the second part of your question, I would begin by land use planning, and I would relate it to the aspect of housing. The first sector that I would like to emphasize or focus on. The requirement for houses that was worked out for 2041, which means that by 2041, so many houses would be required for those people who are either living in slums or unauthorized colonies or new migrants who come to Delhi. And the requirement there was a requirement of 3.5 billion or 34.5 lakh houses. Now, what can a planner do or a city planner do in this regard? They would do, and what the fourth master plan to a great extent rightly suggests, is that they are following three policies with regard to meeting the housing requirements by 2041. The first thing that they are doing is that they are trying to create space, or you could say they are trying to regenerate the existing housing stock, which basically means that within the planned colonies that we see, that they are trying, the suggestion is to increase the densities there by identifying those areas which have been not utilized so far, and building some kind of an accommodation there. To me, this sounds a little unrealistic because it is not so easy to do that. But this is what one thing that they have suggested. In addition to this, the second thing they have suggested is to create new housing stock. And here, the case of land use planning has been applied, where they would be acquiring new land. In the peripheral areas of Delhi, there is still some vacant land that is available. And you might have heard some time back about the TDA's land pooling policy. So what they are doing there is that they are trying to assemble or acquire vacant land, and they would be constructing or creating new housing stock. So part of the housing demand would be met in this manner. The third thing that they are doing is that they, in both these cases, in greenfield areas, which means creating where new housing stock is being created, and in the brownfield areas, which means that in increasing densities in existing built up areas, in both these cases, they are also emphasizing on creating rental housing, which means that there are migrants who are in a position to pay for the rents, who come to Delhi from time to time. So in both these different two types of areas, rental housing of different types would be created. It has happened in the past, but this policy would continue. It would be created. So because to own a house in Delhi is not easy for everyone. So for this reason, and the government of India has also come out with a Rental Housing Act, which has begun to be applied, or it would be applied very soon, which would support such suggestions being made in the Delhi Master Plan. So this is the housing sector insofar as the fourth plan is concerned. If I would also explain one more sector, if it is of interest for the purpose of the discussion here, and that is to say the water sector, water supply sector. Very recently in the news, you heard about Haryana government not releasing enough supply, and Delhi would be facing a serious problem of water in the times to come. Delhi's water situation is such that it is dependent, it does not have sufficient water within its own territory. So it is dependent, over 50% dependence on the adjoining states of Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh. So, there is a role for master plan, and the master plan has been playing this role over the years, not only this plan, but in the previous plans also. The fourth plan specifically in this regard says that water consumption is more. They give 4 suggestions in this regard. One is that you need to reduce the consumption of water. It is the norm or the standard that has been set for Delhi. They say that norm or standard of supply, like liters per capita per day, every person's requirement in a day has to be brought down. So they suggest reduce this consumption of water in a variety of ways. One is make them more aware, give them low supply, and improve the plumbing fixtures within the households, which will bring down the consumption levels. The second thing is, they say there is a lot of scope for recycling of water. There are cities in the West and in UAE, etc., where there is a lot of emphasis on recycling of water. Water is a very precious resource, and if you do not recycle it, you will not be able to meet the requirements of the society. And therefore, they say the fourth plan suggests greater emphasis on recycling of wastewater. 80% of the water that goes in the pipeline for supply, 80% of that water goes to waste. There are several methods in which that wastewater can be reused for non-potable purposes, for washing cars, for providing water to the plants, in cisterns, in bathrooms, and so on. So the third thing they say is rainwater harvesting. Of late, I've written a couple of articles on papers on rainwater harvesting, because this is still a very neglected area in India as a whole, and even in Delhi. Although the building bylaws of Delhi, they have made it mandatory for households of a size of 100 square meters to install rainwater harvesting systems within their premises. But that condition is not being fulfilled due to various social and economic reasons. And therefore, there is a lot of rain, I would say, that is received during the monsoon season each year, which is not being stored. Number one, stored for reuse, and also enough provisions have not been made for its channelization into groundwater, or what we say is groundwater recharge. Rainwater harvesting systems have been installed in a number of institutional areas, commercial areas, public places, and households in Delhi. But I would say only 20 to 30% of this work has been done. There is still a lot of scope. So that's the third aspect in which they say that the water demand should be met. And the fourth is systemic issues. There are, in the pipeline, there are leakages. There is a lot of non-revenue water because of non-metered supply that is being provided in several areas. In slums and unauthorized colonies, there is a very unhappy situation of water supply. So while planned areas would still be receiving some quantities of water, the concern, or the main concern during pandemic times, during Corona times, when there is so much emphasis on sanitation and hygiene, when water and cleansing is required, and you can imagine those households do not have adequate access to piped water supply. Piped supply is cleaner than other tankers and other sources of water. I explained two sectors, housing and water supply. The plan does touch upon two sectors to a great extent. I would say that there are further work is required because I see deficiencies and scope for further improvement.
That's a very comprehensive overview of what this plan contains, and I'd like to talk about one or two of the specifics. So one thing that struck me was that compared to some of the previous plans, it recognizes the need for densification and for reducing commuting times for people. So, and for this, it actually promotes more mixed use of property within neighborhoods and allows for relaxations for certain kinds of mixed use. So, can you give us your perspective on these proposals? Are these first, what is the context in which these proposals are being made? And second, do you think these will actually solve the problem that they're trying to solve in the first place?
Mixed use of land is basically, this has been done for two reasons. One is for the convenience of citizens, and the second is it does address to a great extent the issue of congestion that we see in Delhi. I will give you one example of mixed use of land, which the listeners, the audience of this program would make it easier for them to understand. When you go to places like Daryaganj in the old parts of Delhi, Daryaganj, and even in the area which is called Bengali Market near Mandi House. There we can see some examples of mixed use of land. By this, what do we mean? We mean that there is on that land, there is a building that has been constructed. And that building is being used not for just one purpose, not for conducting an economic activity or not for just for the purpose of living, which means a house. It is being used for both of these purposes. So when you go to these areas like Daryaganj or Bengali Market, you can see that on the ground floor, there are some shops, and not only shops, there are banks, bank branches, and a whole range of other economic activities. And then on the top or on the above floors, you can see that there are families who are residing there. So this idea or this method that is followed is not new. It is being advocated, or it has been suggested, and it is being practiced. By practice, we mean that it has already happened. This has already been implemented. So the fourth plan is not making a new recommendation in this regard. All of these examples that I just mentioned to has happened because the previous plans have been that refer to mixed use of land. Those provisions have already been implemented. The current plan just reinforces or re-emphasizes these ideas and would offer continuous scope in these in new developments that are occurring, offer scope for mixed use of land. So what happens is when you apply such strategies, it serves two purposes. It also creates some problems because if you are allowing mixed use of land, you have to create the necessary facilities which would be required by those people who visit such areas. I'll just come to it later. But this mixed use of land, according to planners, serves two purposes. One is it reduces commuting time. You don't have to go too far, because if you're living on the first floor and if are operating an economic activity on the ground floor, then it makes their life simpler. And urban planning is all about improving the quality of life. You have to simplify things. You have to make things people friendly. So it does have an advantage. You don't have to travel all the time to go from one part of the city to another. According to the people who have prepared the fourth plan, they also say that mixed use of land also would help address the issue of commuting during Corona times. Or if such things happen in future, everything has come to a standstill. It did come to a standstill when there were waves of pandemic that were occurring. When the numbers of cases were very high, you know that everything was locked down and you could not. So mixed use of land, and when things open gradually, when unlocking happens, activities such as mixed use of land facilitate or ease in the life of city dwellers. So this is one way of understanding how effectively mixed use of land technique works. The other example can be given, again, it is not new. They speak about transit-oriented development, which means that, we see it a lot in developed cities where they have created facilities along major travel corridors, which means that you do not have to divert your vehicle too much to avail a certain facility or service or buy a certain commodity. It is on the way. You just imagine being in that position. Like, it is not always easy to travel to far off places to buy a certain thing or to avail a certain service. If that facility is available along your routes of daily travel, then it becomes very convenient and accessible to do the work. You save time, you save money in travel costs, and there is less stress. So all of these things are very helpful. Now, in the case of the fourth plan, they are saying you have transit-oriented development, which means along the mobility corridors, along major highways, there is scope for creation of activities. Like this can be further understood by if you walk down under the subways of Connaught Place. I would say that they are still very less unutilized. There is scope for many activities to be provided within those surveys or such areas. So all of this potential needs to be tapped. They have tapped a lot in global cities, but there is a lot of scope for tapping within our cities, including Delhi. So these are, I would say, effective strategies to address some of the requirements, very important requirements that citizens require on an everyday basis.
That's true. And this plan does offer many new ideas on how to do some of these things better. My last question before we end is around the question of implementation. And one of the issues that's plagued the planning process, especially in Delhi, has been weak implementation and delays in implementation. I think the last plan, the master plan for 2021, was only finally notified in 2007, 6 years after the planning process was initiated. So could you talk to us a little bit about how the planning process will work from here on now that the draft is in the public domain? And what are some of the problems in implementing the plan that need to be corrected so that this master plan can actually work properly?
This question is extremely relevant, and it has been bothering not only the civil society, but also the planning community. because many a times planners are being blamed for things which they don't even do. What citizens see is what is in front of their eyes. They see the development that has happened over the years. They see inequalities in those development. They see deficiencies in those development, and they say that there are deficiencies within the planners and the planning community and in the master plans, and this is the result. But this is not always true. This is part of the picture that is visible, and the other part is also to be understood in order to arrive at a conclusion. In articles which we see, or in the media which we read about, I think a holistic approach is not being followed to understand the situation. If you look at I'll just deviate from this master plan. I would just bring in the topic of smart cities mission in India. If you just look at that mission and the progress, there is a lot of criticism about the fact that everybody is asking, where are these smart cities? The Government of India and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs had promised that they would deliver, or they would transform existing cities into smart cities within a period of 5 years, because that's what they had promised at the time of when the agenda or the political manifesto was prepared by the current government in power. Now, this is not the best way to place things in public domain. Number one, you cannot expect any Indian city which is at a very low level of development when compared with other global cities to transform into a smart city. Smart city is a very advanced concept. I would say that it is a good program initiated by the Government of India, but it would take several more years if things are done in a proper manner. Now, coming back to the master plan. Similarly, a planner would have put down some of the best things in the planning document, but when it is translated on the ground, which means that the planning provisions or the proposals that are provided in the plan or the policies that are like acquire land, do a land pooling exercise, or do water harvesting, or do water recycling, or have clean economies, or maintain green and blue assets. These are policy statements, or reduce vehicle pollution, or promote green economies, or promote nighttime economies for improving livelihood. These are policy statements which have to be a part of the master plan process. They are a part of the master plan. Now, the problem occurs when you begin to translate. So I would say that the plan is 50% good in its efforts. There are deficiencies in this plan also, like the previous plans. I won't take time, but just to explain one deficiency, that when they talk about land pooling for creation of more houses, new housing stock, are they thinking enough of the hinterland or the peri-urban areas or the rural areas where agriculture is still being practiced? Are they also thinking about that population, how it's going to be impacted, or whether adequate compensation or rehabilitation of that population would be done in a desirable manner is questionable. But other than that, if the 50% plan is fine, and if they proceed with implementation, the first thing is to translate those plans or provisions into projects on water, projects on mobility, projects on environment, projects on housing, and so on, projects on culture or heritage, maintaining heritage. Delhi is so rich in heritage, but if you compare a heritage maintenance levels in the West or global city, which is much advanced, and in Delhi, there is significant amount of difference, I would say. So you are translating those policy proposals into projects. Nowhere the plan says how the implementing agencies, once the plan goes into the hands of the implementing agencies, would be going deeper into it, because they are the ones who would be developing projects that would be related to the policies that are mentioned in the plan, then they are already not good in financial condition. Most of these civic agencies, their financial condition is weak. So if such proposals are provided in the master plan, and if they don't have sufficient, so I would say the first challenge that is coming in the way of proper implementation of the plan is finance. The smart city plans, which is different from a master plan, has gone into having a section on finance and also describing how that those finances can be mobilized by the civic agency or a special purpose vehicle in the case of Smart Cities Mission, and what are the options that can be tapped to raise funding. But in the case of master plan, which is a longer term 20-year document, no such information is provided in the master plan, which explains how the implementing agencies, because there are a wide variety of implementing agencies, environment department, urban development department, transport, how, or the Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement, DUSIB Improvement Board, they need enough funds, or the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, they need enough funds to implement the proposals mentioned in the master plan. So if they don't have sufficient funds, the quality of projects and the quality of materials that are being used would not be sustainable. It would deteriorate over time. It would not be available for a long time. And again, the grievances of the citizens would emerge within a very short period. So finance, I would say, is a significant issue that needs to be addressed. The second thing that comes in the way of implementation is about the things like the demand for a resource like water. The plan is saying that this is how the demand for water can be made. But if the water is not available within Delhi, or they are not doing rainwater harvesting, they are not in a significant manner, they are not doing water recycling, and all the time they are dependent on the adjoining states. I would not say that it's a wrong thing to be dependent on adjoining states. If a city's physiographic or resource character is such that they will never be able to meet their water demand through their own city limits on their own, dependence is natural. But in some ways, the governments of the adjoining states need to have a better relationships or coordination with Delhi, so that abundant water. States of Himachal Pradesh and Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, they have much more water. I would say that Uttarakhand, these are water abundant states. They have a lot of fresh water it's not reaching Delhi in the way it should. And therefore, while the plan talks about it, if the states do not coordinate or cooperate with each other, then no amount of reusing of water or no amount of reduction of water or harvesting would be good, because Delhi's population is sizable, and if you don't have adequate water as required, about 1455 million gallons per day by 2041. It's about 935 million gallons per day currently, according to the Delhi Jal Board, the water supply agency in Delhi. Then, irrespective of the fact that the plan is suggesting several things, and if the civic agencies are not working to the best of their abilities due to their own institutional or capacity issues, then there is every possibility that what has happened in the past will happen in future. And by this I mean that there has been a shortage of water, and there have been conflicts over water in unauthorized colonies, in slums. From time to time, there is conflict between the government department and between with the inhabitants of those areas, which is not a good sign. These examples of irregularities and underperformance brings down the rank of cities like Delhi when they are compared with global cities. And Delhi's ranking on congestion, on water, on quality of life, on the percentage of population which is below poverty line or living in informal areas, Delhi's ranking is very low. They do not fare very well when compared with global cities. One example is the case of air pollution, about which everybody knows. Delhi has been ranked number 1 most polluted city, and Indian cities about 14, 15 most polluted cities in the world. And when you even compare it with Chinese cities, Indian cities do not fare well. When you walk in places like Beijing, one good activity in a smart city, or when we talk about sustainable cities, livable cities, like the master plan talks about, one good characteristic of a smart city or a livable city is walkability. The master plan, the smart city plan for Delhi, the master plan, they talk a lot about walkability. But it is impossible to walk even within the neighborhood to a local market, because areas are not walkable. There is pollution, dust pollution, vehicular pollution, and all sorts of foul smells. And the walking areas, on some roads other than New Delhi area, there are several roads in Delhi and in the adjoining cities like Gurgaon where footpaths are not available. So, for this reason, I would say that there is even the master plan would be providing, or the bylaws would be providing for doing such things. Creating a footpath is not a new thing. Creating street infrastructure or road infrastructure are not new things. But the thing to understand is whether the agencies who are responsible for providing these things, and this also relates to the master plan, do they have enough skills within their functionaries? Are they aware enough? Have they created citizen grievance mechanisms properly? Do they have enough funds? In a city like Moscow, the city government of Moscow has an excellent online, offline systems for taking feedback from citizens about each an aspect of how would the citizens want their city should be. What should be the color of a metro line corridor? In Delhi, these metro lines were developed in phases. There was this color used, blue line and green line and this line and that line. And even for simple things, the citizens of Moscow so it's called a referendum system. Their feedback is obtained, and if they are not willing to change the name of the city. So my concluding remark would be that even when the plan has provided for several of the things, the implementing agencies, their capacities and their skills and their financial condition still needs to be improved. That amount of support has to be offered by the higher levels of government to bring them up to a certain level and to prepare them so that they become stronger. Once they've been brought up to a certain level, their performance would improve, and many of the provisions that have been provided in the plan would see the light of day and would not remain on paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. This was a very informative discussion. I think it will be quite good to put it up. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. To make sure you don't miss it, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about our research and team, you can visit us at carnegieindia.org. You can also find us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you for listening. See you next time.